Thanks for watching live or listening back to this show from Teachers Talk Radio. You can catch up with all our shows by visiting our YouTube channel or by listening back at ttradio.org. Don't forget to like and subscribe to enjoy more live education conversation from TTR. We hope you enjoy this show.
Outstanding and world-class vision and world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused.
Yes, good evening everybody and welcome back to Teachers Talk Radio. We are here live for you this evening with a special guest and special interview in just a few moments' time. Just before we get into that, it would be great for me to welcome you and thank you for joining us live. Of course, anybody who's watching this on X, on LinkedIn, on YouTube, you can comment, you can get involved. Some of you might be listening in the car because you haven't got home yet, in which case you can't get involved, but shout at the phone. That there are plenty of opportunities to interact with Teachers Talk Radio. Just send us a post on Blue Sky or X or anywhere else where you follow us and sort of get involved in the conversation. Special thanks to John Catt, who support all our shows here at Teachers Talk Radio. If you're interested in finding out more or getting a John Catt book, perhaps for your CPD library, then head over to johncattbookshop.com and you can use the code JCTTR2425 to get 20% off any number of books on their website. And actually, you can meet John Catt this weekend on Saturday, 1st of March at Teachers Talk Connect in Manchester. Are you coming to Teachers Talk Connect? I hope you are. Tickets have been flying for the last 2 weeks. It's a completely free event. Any teacher who teaches in a 3 to 19 school or college can go for nothing. And we have 50 plus speakers from across different subject strands and areas, all in Manchester this Saturday. Please join us. There's still a few tickets left. So if you fancy coming along, get involved. If you're in the Northwest or even beyond, I promise you it'll be worth coming to. It's going to be absolutely amazing. So let me talk a little bit about this conversation. In recent times, Alun Ebenezer has been making the headlines. As you may have seen on BBC News and various other outlets, Alun has, I guess, been speaking out on behaviour. He's talked about us mollycoddling kids. He's talked about hiding behind words like well-being and safe spaces. He's talked about safety in schools. He's talked about Welsh education. He's talked about behaviour in Wales, in particular in schools in Wales. And tonight it's going to be an opportunity to talk to him about all his thoughts on those matters and, of course, his views on zero tolerance. Now, interestingly enough, just this evening, and we've just posted this out a few hours ago, Monmouthshire Council have been meeting in response to some of Alun's conversations. In fact, I'll bring Alun on. Alun, are you aware that they've been talking about your conversations about behaviour?
Well, tell me more, Tom.
Well, I don't know when this meeting happened. I only read the report. It's only come out an hour or two ago, the report on Yahoo. But apparently, the head of inclusion for Monmouthshire County Council, who is Dr. Morwenna Wagstaff, has said, we're trying to get schools and settings to recognise, and they are getting pretty good at this and have some really good practice, to look at what the children are presenting. The behaviour is a communication very often of something that is unmet, an unmet need. Very often, we have children who are presenting with behaviours of real challenge and concern or at risk of exclusion. And when we take the time to unpick that, it turns out they are struggling to read or something that happens that we weren't aware of, and that need has not been met. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, so Morwenna is one of the best people I've ever worked with. I rely on her expertise on a weekly, sometimes daily basis. I think she's exceptional. I think when I make the comments I made last week in the press, I'm not talking about the young people who really do need specific interventions, whether that is a teaching and learning intervention, an additional intervention, a kind of mental and health well-being intervention. I'm not talking about those children. I'm talking about the vast majority who hide behind those things. That's what I'm talking about. And I think that we've only got so many resources. And so to be able to help the people who really need the help, we need to deal with this critical mass.
How do you distinguish, though, between those that you've just mentioned who are, to sort of paraphrase, playing the system, and those with genuine needs or concerns? I mean, there will be many out there who will say, well, how do you know? Many of these needs and issues have not been diagnosed, they've not been covered, they've not been even recognized on any level, but they're present.
Well, I think it's difficult. I don't think it's easy, because I think, you can have a child with ADHD who some of the reasons why he or she displays the behavior they do is because they've got ADHD, but equally some of the behavior they display is because they're just being naughty, and it's all mixed in. It's not clear cut, so it's difficult. But what we find, and not just myself, there's been an overwhelming response to what happened last week. My understanding is there were over 1,000 messages to the BBC, only 7 negative. So it seems to have captured the mood. I think what we're finding is people with undiagnosed needs are acting as if they've got diagnosed needs. And so anyone with a diagnosed need, of course, we're going to meet that need. We're going to do all we can to help them. I agree as well that sometimes it is down to teaching and learning. And I think that lots of young people, they get bored, they play up because either they're bored and need to be stretched, or they play up because they can't access the curriculum. I agree with all of that. I'm not disputing any of that. But what I'm saying is our whole approach, our whole ethos, our whole culture needs to be completely looked at and reviewed and refined and changed. Because, that's why there's a summit in Wales very soon to talk about behaviour, because something isn't right. So if we get the culture right, the ethos, the approach right, then within all of that, we can really target the support to those who really need the help.
You've said there's something sort of going wrong. Let's dig into that. What is that? What has gone wrong, in your opinion?
Well, I think what's gone wrong is, I'm 50 tomorrow, okay? I know I don't look it, but I'm 50 tomorrow, okay? When I was in school, the teacher was always right. The adult was always right. I can tell you stories about my primary school, which you find incredible. Now, if you want a headline, I remember being in primary school with a boy in my school called Christopher who bit somebody, and our teacher got under the table and bit him back. Wow, imagine that today. Now, that was then. I remember going home from school, being in trouble. I would never tell my parents. Why? Because I knew I'd have another row. But what's happened is that with all that's gone on from the 70s and 80s, the pendulum has swung completely the other way. So the child is always right. Pupil voice, listen to learners, all good things, but there has to be a balance. And I think that we're in a society now where sometimes, no has to mean no. No can't eventually turn into yes. And I think that when people who are not in schools, who write this legislation, who want to bring in these kind of support and all the rest of it, they don't see the young people, if you like, in their natural habitat when they're with lots of other young people behaving like they normally do. They only see them in isolated incidents, and that's when they make decisions. I think that's my point really is, I think for me, I've taught 12,000 young people from all different cultures and backgrounds, with all different needs and abilities. What they all need is firm boundaries and strict discipline. And then within that, you can really identify those who genuinely need help and target our support. Why is it that CAMS cannot keep up with their demand? Why is it that the SEN departments can't keep up? It's because we're not targeting the support, and we are hiding behind labels and everything else.
But there'll be many out there who'll say, you know, the fact they're drowning is because there was a lot of needs, issues, challenges that were not being recognized or talked about, say, 10 to 20 years ago. Mental health, for example, you know, related things. And therefore, there'll be people who will say, we're playing catch up. We're getting to an equilibrium of recognition for more of the things that that have always existed in the children, but have not necessarily been recognized until recently. And that's why we're having the increase in referrals rather than an actual increase in the things. They're saying they've always existed, but 10, 20 years ago they were ignored.
Well, my answer to that is look at the results. I mean, are our young people more resilient? Have they got a better can-do attitude? Can they cope with things that life throws at them? Are they achieving better? Are our literacy and numeracy levels higher? They're not. So something's wrong. And I would argue strongly that it's our approach, because go back to the headline. We are, you know, the same people who will complain about this interview are the same people who complain about the youth of today. Wasn't like this in my day. Why can't children read? Why can't children write? Why can't children count? They're the same people. They're just complaining. We're all after the same thing, but we haven't got a magic wand, and we have to put things in place. And to me, I go back to it. We have to change our overall approach. So
do you think that there is, we'll finish on this issue in a minute, but do you think that there is an overdiagnosis issue at the moment?
Of course there is. Of course there is. I mean, you know, for me, labels are not for children, they're for clothes. All right. Yet we label everything. And so I really believe, let me be absolutely clear. There are some young people who've got real health and mental health and well-being issues, but we haven't got the time or resources to give them the help they need because of everything else that is clogging up the system. Because the one thing I say to young people all the time, the one thing you all have to know is this: life is hard. I never want to get up at 6:30 in the morning. I don't really want to go to physics. I'd rather be on my PlayStation than writing an English essay. But that doesn't mean I've got a problem or issue. That's just life. And we have to build resilience into our young people. Now, there are some young, so that's what we need to get across, that we have to change the culture, the attitude. You know, we talk about, I'm reading a really good book at the moment called Generations, about the different generations, you know, from the silence to Generation Z. We're all different. These current generations, it's not their fault, by the way, we've created them. We need to build resilience into them. That understanding that life is hard. You have to do things you don't want to do. It's not about making you happy all the time. It's just getting on with it.
But to be controversial, Alan, in the world that we're sort of moving into, if you like, with technology taking on such a massive role, there are many who will say that in 50, 100, whatever number of years' time, that automation will have taken over the world, so to speak, that a lot of the sort of manual, low-skilled jobs won't exist because automation will have taken those jobs. And therefore, you know, the idea of the working patterns of, if you like, the Industrial Revolution, you know, and the sort of 9 to 5 and the, you know, going through sort of a structure and a system of a day, that those things are going to change. And therefore the idea that they have to do it, or that's not what life is that sort of changing? Is the world evolving? Is the world of work evolving? Or do you sort of just say, look, things are this way and they're always going to be this way, and everyone's always going to have to work hard to do okay in the world?
Well, I mean, Tom, what you just said there is huge, right? My view would be whatever the world looks like, there are certain things you have to have. You have to have a work ethic. You have to have resilience. You have to deal with heartbreak and sadness and grief. You have to overcome failure, whatever the world looks like. And so if what you've just described is what the future is, then what we do in schools has to, do you know what I mean? For me, it's all about so we have to say, to me, this is what I love about the Welsh curriculum, by the way, it's purpose driven. And it's saying, what does an 18 need to look like? What skills do they need? What do they need to know? What experiences they need to enjoy? What should their character be like? Now, I would say that whatever that world looks like, and none of us really know, they have to have that kind of high standards of behavior, good manners, turning up on time, being resilient, having a can-do attitude, whatever happens. And so I think that at the moment, we are self-indulgent. We are saying to young people, do whatever you want, be whatever you want, as long as you're happy. And actually, in saying that, it's making them desperately unhappy. It's counterproductive. And I agree that there are people who need genuine help, but they can't get that help at the moment because of all the other things that are clogging up the system.
Okay, so you said in your interview about Wales, and I think I'm paraphrasing here, but I think it was along the lines of Wales has a choice, when it has some choices to make when it comes to sort of behaviour and their approach. Can you sort of characterise, because you are obviously the head teacher of a school, so you will have your approach, your policy. So it'd be great if you can sort of give us some examples of those in a minute. But I also want you to draw a comparison, if you like, because you said Wales has a choice. So I want you to sort of outline, especially for people who don't work in Wales or have never worked in Wales. I used to work in Wales as a teacher, but you know, what are those two choices, and what do things look like in Wales along those two lines, if you like, at the moment?
Yeah, so I think again, I'll give you a word now that gets bandied about a lot. Inclusive education. All right. I think we should be inclusive. I really do. Okay. But sometimes to include, you have to exclude, because I can talk about schools that I've taught in, which at one point were the best in the country, and now are going into special measures. Why? They got rid of exclusions. But what happened? Everyone was there, but some children were being bullied, harassed, their lives were miserable, the lessons were getting disrupted because we were inclusive. But actually, we weren't being inclusive because we weren't being fair to everyone. So sometimes you need to take a hard line approach and say, do you know what? Everyone's welcome. Everyone's welcome, all right? But you're welcome as long as you follow these basic rules. And if you follow these basic rules, then it doesn't matter your ability, your ethnicity, your culture, your background, your religion, you're all welcome. But you have to sign up to these basic rules. And so my job is to prepare young people for life. And I believe quite firmly that if young people behaved in the real world like they behave in school, they wouldn't survive. They wouldn't keep their jobs. They wouldn't have their mortgages. Some might end up in prison. Why? Because we're trying to be inclusive. We're not preparing them for life. So I believe I am all about inclusion. Really, I am. But we have to do it properly. And I believe that, the great news is this. I went to this school, and within no time at all, over 90% of them are doing what you want them to do, 90% of them. So that's quite positive about young people. They'll say, Mr. Ebenezer, we've never been happier. We've never felt safer because the rules are there. So that's why I think we need to change our approach. We need to stop playing lip service to words like well-being, safe spaces, inclusion, and actually mean it and put things in place where those things are a reality. I would like to think that every space in our schools is safe. That's what I'd like to think.
I mean, on this. So, okay, so you've mentioned exclusions. I mean, has your exclusion rate been higher than other schools since you've took over at the school you're in now, or is it average, or is it?
I think it's probably about average. I think the reality is that when and I made this very clear when I came to the local authority, that I imagined by my approach, zero tolerance, there would be a spike in exclusions. But to me, there's 1,300 pupils in the school. I would have no problem at all. I mean, I only ever exclude really for one day. I would have no problem at all with excluding 1,300 pupils for one day if they never reoffended. And I think our rates are something like 60% never reoffend. I think that's quite successful because it works. And then when you think it doesn't work, you try other things, Saturday detentions, bringing their parents in. You try everything it takes, but I don't think we should be frightened of you. And the whole point of an exclusion isn't that you put them out of school for 5, 10, 15 days. You sometimes do that if you have to put things in place while they're away, but generally speaking is one day. And the whole point is they go out, they come back with their parents, you start again. That's the whole point of it. But I would say it's about average. But, I think that you can't say, my aim is to bring down exclusion rates, because I don't know what's going to happen next week. So I can't promise that. All I'm saying is these are our standards. This is our culture. And if you don't meet that, you will be excluded. But I think the great news is that over 60% of our young people once they don't reoffend.
In the classroom, though, in corridors, in classrooms, in the building, this idea of us mollycoddling kids, I'd love it if you could give some tangible examples of what that might look like. Because people outside of maybe a school might hear that and they may nod or they may shake their heads, but they might not know what it actually looks like in a school. So I don't know whether you can give us some examples or something to sort of say, this is why I said this is what it actually looks like in schools.
Oh, of course. So, I mean, there was a time when you might have 100 pupils walking on the corridors because they had a bad head, they had a sniffly nose, they had a bit of an upset tummy. And so they'd be sent to reception to sit in the medical room. They might not be having a great day, so they go and sit in the well-being room. To me, if I've got a bad head, whatever room I'm in, whether I'm in the maths room or the medical room, or whatever, I've got a bad head. So get on with it. Just get on with it. I say to them all the time, if I only went to school when I felt fighting fit, I'd never go to school. If I went to my meetings when I wanted to go to my meetings, I'd never go to my meetings. So there's loads of things where I don't feel 100%. I don't really want to do it, but I do it. And so we don't have a medical room where people can just sit there and be ill. We haven't got one. We shut it. We've got a kind of solid front door to well-being. So you have to be referred. You can't refer yourself to well-being anymore. And our well-being, I think, is sector leading. I generally do. I think the people who do it are brilliant. And they say to me, Mr. Ebenezer, finally, we can get to the people who need the help. So that's what I'm trying to do, is trying to unclog the system and say to some young people, which is in their interest, by the way, just go to maths, go to science, go to history. Yeah, your head's not great, but drink some water, you'll be fine. You'll be fine. So that's what I mean by mollycoddling.
There'll be some out there who will say that sort of dismissing the student's well-being. Like, if a student isn't feeling good, why shouldn't they have 30 minutes or an hour out to get their head together, to maybe feel better? And then at the end of that hour, they feel better, they feel refreshed, and then they go back into lessons in a better state of mind, or maybe even longer than that, depending on what the issue was.
Again, I would say they're the same people who would talk about young people, they're not resilient, they don't get on with it, they haven't got a can-do attitude. My point is this: Mr. Ebenezer, right, really cares about young people's well-being. He wants them to be well. He wants them to be happy. He wants them to be content, right? My point is,
good question. I'll ask that in a minute.
The way we are going about it is wrong. We're not looking after their well-being. In fact, indulging them is not helping them. Telling them to get on with it, telling them they have to be resilient, that's what's helping them. And then the people who've got, because I've come across in the last 3 years in what I've been doing, I've come across young people with real problems, don't know how they're going to carry on with life problems. I want to get them the help. I really do. And, there's people who I come across and they've got terrible backgrounds. When I broke up for half term a couple of days ago, I couldn't believe it. I couldn't wait. There were young people in my school who were dreading it because they were going to homes where they wouldn't be fed properly. They wouldn't be looked after properly. They are the young people I want to help, not the army of young people who are hiding behind these things.
You've mentioned, Paul's raised the question there. Who are your biggest oppositions to this approach? Who are the people who try and stop you from doing what you want to do?
Well, I think there are. Everyone wants high standards. Every parent I've ever come across wants high standards. They pat me on the back, Mrs. Ebenezer, brilliant, let's do it, until it's their child. That's number one. I think it's people who write legislation who don't know what it's like on a day-to-day basis in schools. I think it's people who meet these young people on a one-to-one, and they kind of take this kind of feel sorry for them approach. I feel sorry for them. But I see what they like with other young people. I see what they're doing to other young people. So I think they're the people I think are the opponents. But, I would say, and I think this is quite heartening, going back to the person who just messaged in, the great news is there aren't that many opponents. That's the great news. I think what we've said over the last 7-8 days has captured the mood and is actually saying what a lot of people are frightened to say. And maybe the opponents are the ones who've got the microphone on social media who would lead us to believe we all think like them. And it's clearly we don't.
There was one comment on our socials, Alan, when we shared a clip of you on the BBC there. And one of them said, there are precisely 0 schools that mollycoddle students. That got 50 likes. So 50 people liked that comment of saying there are 0 schools that actually mollycoddle students.
Okay. Well, I would disagree with that. I think that I agree with the point that schools don't want to, but I think the way things are set up means that we sometimes have to.
Okay. Now you mentioned sort of the having those high standards, and expectations. What about the rules themselves? Because I know a couple of years ago, or was it last year? I don't know. Maybe last year, 2 years ago, you hit the headlines again about the length of skirts, and there was a BBC article where they said that you'd asked staff to measure the skirts, or that people had claimed that there was a tape measure and all the rest of it. Right? When it comes to the rules in your school now, are there any that you feel are they all rules that you feel that you need? For example, the uniform rules. Do you think they're worth pursuing, or that there'll be those out there that say, yeah, rules, we agree with the rules, but what rules? They don't want as many rules, and maybe they don't want rules around things like uniform and other things of that nature.
Yeah, I understand. I mean, to be clear, there were no tape measures. When I came to that school, I didn't introduce any policies. All I did was enforce what was already there, which wasn't being enforced. So that I just want to make that point absolutely clear. I did not bring in the rules about the length of skirts. I was just enforcing what should have already been happening. As far as uniform is concerned, I do believe in uniform. I've been in lots and lots of schools now. I've never been in a good school with a bad uniform. What's the point of a uniform? The point of a uniform is, I founded a school in London, and in that school, you had 30% of the young people coming from the most affluent backgrounds in the country. You had 40% in the most deprived. They had immaculate uniform. Because you could walk into that school tomorrow, Tom, and you wouldn't have a clue who was who. You identify with the school. I think that to me, what's uniform about. But I understand there's debate over that. I totally understand that. For me, the basic rules are that we turn up on time. We go to every lesson, even though we don't want to. We are polite and well-mannered. We treat other people the way we want them to treat us. Self-discipline. So it doesn't matter if, for example, in my school now, 1,299 students have been horrible and nasty. I'm nice. I'm not responsible for them. I'm responsible for myself. I work hard. I do my best. Of course, I'd rather be on my PlayStation or my Xbox or anything else. But I work hard. I think everybody would agree with those. But I think uniform, which is what I've hit the headlines for previously, I do think it's important, just because it is a leveler, and you identify with the school, and you don't know who are the haves and the have-nots. So that's what I would say about all those things. But I think I would call it. I spoke to the students of my school last week before we broke up, and I said, we've had this coverage. We're deemed as a strict school with high standards.
Apparently
so. But as far as they're concerned, live up to those high standards. Now, what have you got to do? You haven't got to do a massive, incredible piece of artwork. You haven't got to score a hat-trick like Mbappe. You haven't got to write an amazing piece of music. All you've got to do are the basics. Turn up on time, go to every lesson, work hard, look smart, be nice. It's easy.
I was wondering what sort of led to the philosophy you've got now in you. We've heard a bit there about your philosophy, your approach. What's built that in you? What are the things that has led to this approach?
Well, I'm a free school meal boy from the Welsh Valleys. In my 27-year career, I've met people from all different backgrounds. I've spoken at Eton. I've spoken at Cambridge University. I've met all kinds of people. And to me, it's all about having high standards, opportunities, and aspiration. Some of the cleverest people I've ever met have been on the back streets of Ebervale and on the top of the Rhondda Valley. And I'm talking now about comparing them with places like Fulham and Chelsea and all the rest of it. But you need standards. You need opportunities. You need to be aspirational. That's what drives me. And I think that that feeling, that pride, that determination, and why should we settle for less?
Do you think, with regards, just circling back a little bit there in terms of, I just want to touch on the word safe spaces, because I did see a few sort of negative comment on the fact you've used that word. Many people have said, look, we actually need safe spaces. Maybe there's a misinterpretation there, or maybe they just flatly disagree with you. But why have you used that specific phrase of like safe spaces?
Well, because again, it's a word that gets banded around an awful lot. Like I said, I would like to think that the whole of my school is a safe space. And what I mean by that is there are young people in the school every day who need to talk to somebody in a safe environment. But that's the culture, isn't it? I feel able to say things. There's people I know I can go to. Heads of year, my form teacher. But the whole place is safe. So it's not just I have to be in this place to feel safe. But if I'm in the canteen and something happens which I don't think is right, I know who to go to draw attention to that. I meet the school council every 6 weeks. I meet the school council, and they tell me exactly what they think about things. Some of them have said to me, it's only that we've gone to the toilet for the first time in 3 years because it wasn't safe before. Now it's safe. I want the toilet to be safe. I want the canteen to be safe. I want behind that technology block to be safe. I want everywhere to be safe. But that doesn't mean to say that nothing ever happens which shouldn't happen. It just means that when those things do happen, I know who to go to. I feel confident to go to it. And like I said to all the students, if I haven't done my homework, Tom, and you and I did maths together, and you say, sir, Alan hasn't done his homework, I would say that's snitching, all right? But if I do something really antisocial and you call me out on it, that's you doing your right thing. That's the culture I'm trying to create. That makes a school safe. You don't need 100 cameras. You don't need all that, do you? It's a culture, an ethos, an approach.
In terms of like in the classrooms then with your teachers, how do you, because there'll be a lot of leaders out there who are probably in similar situations to you. They've inherited schools where perhaps behaviour is maybe not out of control, but poor. Really, I mean, I don't like the phrase low level disruption for several reasons, but cursed with low level disruption, just consistent classes, walking in and out of classrooms, silliness and people not engaged with learning and being rude and being maybe a bit sly as well and all the rest of it, right? It's all well and good saying, yeah, standard expectations and, Ofsted gradings and all the rest of it. There'll be many out there who'll say, we don't really care what Ofsted grade they get because they turn up for 2 days, you can see whatever sort of behavior you want and all the rest of it. So what, and also there'll be many who'll say, well, on the flip side of that, they'll say, yeah, we've turned a school around and it is just pure compliance. It is just, I mean, I'm not saying that as a bad thing, because maybe you'll see that as a step towards something better, and I get it. But there'll be many who'll say, yeah, it's all well and good, but what are you actually doing with the classrooms and the teachers in the classrooms to try and turn that round? And is it working?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good question. So I think the first thing I say is we've brought in a system where every young person's got a conduct card, which they take to every lesson, right?
Okay.
And in every lesson then that, I might be, and that's just to deal with, I know you don't like the word, but that's just to deal with low level disruption. Right?
Yeah.
I'm in a class. I'm in Mr. Rogers' class. I'm a bit lively, I'm a bit silly. And Mr. Rogers says to me, I've got everyone's conduct cards on the desk. Mr. Rogers says to me, Alun, come on. That's your chance. And then I say, oh, sorry, sir. Then I carry on. Mr. Rogers takes my conduct card. Now, this is your choice. Do you carry on or not? I'm still being a bit of an idiot. Okay, you give me a signature. Every 2 signatures equals a detention the same day. We've had to change that in Wales because it's not allowed. That's one thing I think we need to change. But so there's a consequence. That's dealing with low-level disruption. If I carry on after that, then every hour of the day, one of the 6 members of the senior leadership team walking around. We walk around classes. How's it going? How's it going? Anyone who's been, we pull them out, take them with us. If they come with us, they probably end up in internal exclusion for the day or something else. If they carry on being disruptive in lessons, we say, okay, listen, it's low level. Mum and dad can come and sit next to you. And they can see what happens in class. So that's how we deal with it. But that's dealing with low-level disruption. Obviously, if you're defiant and you tell me to F off or nah, I'm not doing it, then that's an exclusion. We can't put up with that. We can't put up with that. But what I'm trying to say to the staff in the school is this, right? If you are teaching a lesson tomorrow and there's no behaviour problems, that's a 0-0 draw. It's not a good lesson. It's just no one's misbehaved. What we have to do as well is make sure our teaching is really, really good. It's challenging. It's exciting. It's engaging. All right? It's taking risks. It's allowing people to make mistakes. It's not just about controlling behavior. But you have to have good behavior to be able to build all the rest. So I love rugby. I would say that behavior is like the forwards. We secure the ball, and then the backs can throw the ball around. But they both go hand in hand.
That's a really interesting analogy. Yeah, I really like that. So, in terms of in terms of that sort of pedagogy, because you've sort of touched on that, I've heard you use the word exciting, engaging. I didn't hear you say fun, but there'll be many even hearing those words on the more, if you like, on the more traditional sides of education who may not sort of buy into those sort of words of exciting, engaging. I don't know what other words you want to throw in there. I've just mentioned one, fun. I mean, what from a pedagogical standpoint, would you say you're more on the sort of progressive or traditional side when it comes to what you want teachers to do in the classroom with their teaching?
So I think that education is about, young people need to know things. It's not just about engaging them, or they have to know things. We have to teach them things, right? They have to know about history. They have to know about geography. They have to know about science. They have to know things. But at the same time, why can't we make that interesting? Why can't we make that exciting? Going to you a word, why can't we make that fun? But fun, exciting, interesting shouldn't be our driver. Our driver is they have to know things. We have to develop their skills. We have to give them experiences. But so that's what we've got. So this is what we've got to do. They've got to know things, develop their skills, give them experiences. Our job as teachers is to make that as engaging, interesting, fun as we possibly can. Somebody has said education is too important to be taken seriously. Let's engage them. Let's excite them. But that's not the driver. We don't aim for fun, excitement. We aim to teach them things. The vehicle we do that is down to us. But to be able to do that, we have to have this foundation of standards, expectations. That's my point.
That's really interesting. I noticed a number of your policies involve parents directly, right? So whether that be the Saturday detention, the parent has to take them to the Saturday detention. Whether that be the parent coming into class and sitting with their kid, if they've reached that point on the behaviour policy. Do you think that could be seen as invasive by some parents or not?
Let me say something now, Tom. I'll give you the line tonight, right? The most important person in the child's education is the parent, all right? Now, you and I could debate now until 11, 12 o'clock tonight whether single-sex schools are better than co-ed schools. We could debate till the cows come home whether mixed ability is better than setting. And we could build our cases. No one will disagree that the more engaged a parent is, the better their child will do. And you talk to any teacher, any school leader, and they will tell you that if they've got the parents backing and support, then the battle's won. And so the naughtiest child in the school, if their parents are supportive, you can win the battle. If they're at home helping them with their homework, we can do that. Now, the difficulty is that lots of our young people, they're not like us. They haven't got homes like us. They haven't got the same approach to education as us. And we have to bridge those gaps. We have to, and it's not about equality. That's rubbish. It's about equity. It's not just about giving them the same opportunities. It's about, making sure that we give them the hike up they need. And so let's get parents involved. And then those parents who need help, let's help them. And those parents who are not willing to help, we have to give them extra support again. But I think, we talk about community-focused schools. It's about the students, the parents, the families, the community. We're all in this together. So yeah, I as long as I'm in this game, I will bang on about the importance of parents. They are absolutely critical in what we're about to do.
Do you think that, and then we'll finish soon, do you think that, and it's something I've actually talked about personally over the last 5 or 6 years, is sort of student and parent responsibility and accountability. Do you think there's an issue there? Do you think that, there'll be many who will sit there and say, yeah, Alan, completely agree with you about support and engagement. I mean, where do you sit when it comes to fines for parents and stuff like that? And would you see that as a bit counterproductive? Would you see that as there's no point, we need to actually go down the lines of engaging them more and bringing them into school and stuff like that, rather than going down?
I think we should do as many things as we can to engage parents, because lots of the harder to reach parents have had bad experience of school themselves. And so and very often the only reason they're ever calling to school is because for us to tell them how badly behaved their child has been. That's not great. We have to create events, school fairs, Christmas carol services. In my previous school, we did dads and lads, mums and sons, international food market evenings. Let's do whatever it is to get them in, to build their trust. Let's ask them. Let's do cooking classes. How to help your child with English homework, how to help your child with maths homework. Let's just engage them. Let's get businesses in. Let's do whatever it takes. So let's make schools. I believe the way to transform society is through the next generation. Where are they? They're in schools. So let's make schools the hub, the heart of communities. And so I think that's where the battle will be won and lost.
Last question, Alan. On the issue of Wales, what is one thing that you'd like Wales education to do more of, and one thing that you'd like them to stop doing in Wales in education?
I think the one thing I'd like them to do is to look up and look out, and to be willing to learn from other people, and not think that if England does something, they have to do the opposite. I think that. And I think, I'd love them to take a kind of, I love the Welsh curriculum. I love it. But if we're going to execute it properly, that doesn't mean to say that we have to be, strictness, firm discipline, high standards. I think the only way that this curriculum is going to live and breathe and transform. I love Wales, right? I'm a Welsh-speaking, passionate Welshman. Gwalia is what I really care about. Let's not go soft. Let's not indulge, because it's not in anyone's interest. Let's be strict, firm, and really and properly engage with what we're trying to do with this new curriculum.
Interesting. Alan, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for taking the time out to speak to us tonight.
Hey, croeso cynnes.
Take care. That was Alun Ebenezer, head teacher of Caldicot School, Monmouthshire in Wales. What an interesting conversation. If you've got any thoughts on that, do message us, tweet us, email us, whatever you want, ttradio.org. Get in touch. We'll put this out as a podcast very soon. Usual places, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, all of those ones. Or if you just want to watch it back now, it'll sit there on YouTube and X and the other places. Big thanks to John Catt again for supporting our show tonight. Really appreciate John Catt, massive supporter of Teachers Talk Radio and teachers in general. If you're interested in finding out more, visit johncattbookshop.com and you can get 20% off any book that you order on there by using JCTTR2425. Ray and Leanne are on Teachers Talk Radio in about 40 minutes. So if this wasn't enough, stay on our YouTube channel, and in 40 minutes time, primary school teacher Leanne and English teacher Ray, the dream team, are taken to the airwaves to talk teaching once again. It's been a pleasure, everyone, and I'll be back again maybe next week. Take care.
Outstanding, a world-class vision, a world-class this.
I'm a real leadership geek, honestly. I've spent my whole career reading books and chatting to people.
I just find the whole thing and the announcement, the way it's been announced, bizarre.
If you could move away from a model where teachers are so intensely focused